Joining me today is one of my best friends, the Yapping Yankee himself, Michael Joe's name Scudiero. Michael, how are you doing? Should I tell him the backstory on that as to how I came up to...
You could go right ahead.
Okay, so basically, just a minor backstory. I said Michael Joe's name Scudiero because we were at his house one time. We were talking about middle names and stuff like that. We asked him, like, oh, Mike, what's your middle name? And instead of just saying Joseph, as in Michael Joseph Scudiero, he just said Joe's name. And we're like, okay, Michael Joe's name Scudiero? Okay, all right, I guess that works. Yeah, Mike, thanks for being here with me today. You want to say a little something or say anything?
It's an honor to be here, and I wore my best suit. I hope you guys like it. But nice American Eagle shirt.
Yeah, the tie is blending in with the gray right now. It's an invisible tie.
It's totally invisible, just like the Rise of Skywalker plot. But anyway,
oh man.
But listen, this is what you got to do.
Yeah.
So, but honestly, in all seriousness, all joking aside, thank you very much for having me on. It's an honor to be here, and I'm very happy to review one of my favorite movies, one of my favorite, shouldn't say favorite movie, but one of my favorite sagas of all time.
Mm-hmm.
My favorite sagas are Rocky, Marvel, and Star Wars, and of course this being one of the three, and this movie wrapped up the Skywalker Saga as we know it.
Yep.
I am more than happy to be here to review it, so thank you very much for having me.
Anytime. Thanks for being here. Okay, so basically what I want to do is I want to split this up into two parts. I want to have a non-spoiler review, and I want to have a spoiler review.
Sure.
And of course, when we get up to the spoiler review, I will give you a warning. I'm very big on, not giving people... We're basically not blindsiding people with spoils. Had that happen to me too many times in my life. Death of my favorite Avenger spoiled, but whatever. That's besides the point. So, I want to try something a little different. I want to... on the count of three... I want you to say the shortest answer possible as to what exactly you thought of this movie. Ready? 1, 2, 3. I liked it. Oh, wow. Okay. So, you want to start off?
So, the general consensus of it is that I was disappointed. Mm-hmm. There were things I liked about it. I didn't go through this film saying there wasn't one thing I liked. I absolutely hated it. Mm-hmm. I don't think this was a terrible film. I don't think it was a good film. I liked some things, but I was also disappointed by other things. And those other things, to a certain degree, depending on what it was, drove me kind of nuts. Now, I'm very passionate about Star Wars, the lore, its rules, whether it be in the comic books, or the TV shows, or Legends, or what have you. I'm very passionate about this sort of thing when it comes to Star Wars. And there were certain things in this movie that they did or didn't do that just really got on my nerves. It really did. But I'm not going to go on saying that, again, that it was a terrible film. I didn't think it was terrible. And after The Last Jedi, which I did think was terrible, I am lenient on this movie in a sense because I do think that a lot of its faults were The Last Jedi's fault. Mm-hmm. So for that reason, I am easier on this film with the issues that I do have, but they're issues nonetheless.
Yeah. So, it's funny that you say that because you and I had the conversations about this movie before we saw it. Months. We've been having this for months.
Yeah.
And so needless to say, my expectations for this one were very, very low.
Same
but
here.
I can't believe I'm saying this. But coming out of this movie, and again, a few days after this movie, I actually really liked it. I can't believe I'm saying that. I thought, and don't get me wrong, it definitely has its flaws, but I felt like there were a lot of things that really, really worked well for it. I thought they wrapped up a lot of things very well. Certain things were left unanswered that I don't think should have been left unanswered. There were certain shoes that they untied, whether it's in the beginning of the trilogy or beginning of the film, that weren't tied back together by the end of the film. But again, a lot of the things that you can expect from a Star Wars movie to be great. Of course, the music's great. Of course, the special effects are great. Of course, the action is great. There are a few action sequences that are pretty memorable, at least in my book. I can definitely see myself going onto YouTube and actually rewatching clips from this particular film. I can't say that too much about episode 7 and 8, but I can definitely say that about this one. There is a lot that stuck out to me. And, there are, honestly, what'd you think of Palpatine's involvement in the film? This is not so much a spoiler, this is in the trailer, but again, we'll try to keep the details as vague as possible, at least for now. So, what did you think?
Yeah, so the first thing I thought right away in the trailer when it first came out, and again, the big thing from the trailer was the final part of it was when you heard Palpatine's left, that you're like, holy crap, the Emperor's coming back.
Yep.
And a lot of people were very, very excited by this, but I found myself kind of upset by it. And the reason being is that Darth Vader is one of my favorite villains of all time. Mm-hmm. And I have such an appreciation for Anakin Skywalker's arc and the fact that he's the chosen one and he's meant to bring balance to the Force. And I really thought that he did that by killing nearly all the Jedi in Revenge of the Sith, and then finishing off the Sith in Palpatine in Episode 6, therefore redeeming himself and completing his arc, and himself dying as well in Return of the Jedi. When I first saw the trailer and I saw the Emperor was coming back, I said, this is a problem. Because I feel to a certain degree, even if the film doesn't fully undermine Anakin's arc, which I don't think it fully did undermine it, which I'm glad about.
Yeah.
But at the same time, inevitably, for any big Darth Vader fan or Anakin Skywalker fan like myself, I think it inevitably throws that monkey wrench into Return of the Jedi, because you're watching that movie, and there's such an epic end to it, with Darth Vader redeeming himself and how he epically saves his son and throws the Emperor down the elevator shaft into the main reactor, blows up. It's so thrilling, it's so poetic, it's such a neat ending. And then he's back.
Yeah. You know, it's funny, when it came to the first, signs that Palpatine was going to be back, I can't say I was flat out excited, but I can't say I was flat out annoyed. I was definitely at the very least a bit intrigued, because Palpatine is definitely one of my favorite characters throughout all of Star Wars. I think he's a seriously underrated character.
And Ian McDiarmid's great, too.
Yeah, he's awesome. He's awesome in the role. What I will say about the Emperor's involvement in the film, and again, I think we will get more into specifics in the spoilers section, but at least for this, when it comes to how he's back, that I felt like was a little vague, at least when I saw it. Again, thinking about it more, I'm warming up to it a bit more. It does still feel a bit vague, still does feel a bit fuzzy. I don't know if it's supposed to be that way, because, again, you spoon feed everything to everybody, then, you're kind of insulting the audience. But, once I got used to the fact that he was back, I really did love what they did with him. I really did. But, I don't want to talk too, just make it just, the Emperor show, at least in this part of the section. When it comes to at least the comparisons between this film and the other films, I can't help but feel like Rise of Skywalker is definitely, damage control from The Last Jedi.
It is.
It definitely is. There are definitely, how do I put this? It definitely felt a bit overstuffed at certain points.
It was rushed.
Yeah,
it was very rushed.
Because, here's the thing. When it comes to, the roadmap, and by the way, it was definitely clear that there was no clear roadmap when it came to these movies. When it comes to the roadmap of, episodes 7 and 9. 7 set up a lot of stuff. 7 got me very excited for what was to come.
And it was the safe start, got you into it. That was his job.
It got us into it. 8, in the grand scheme of things, got us nowhere. It got us absolutely nowhere. Almost, or at least almost nowhere. I don't want to talk in absolutes, because only Sith talks in absolutes, but it got us almost nowhere. Whereas it was now the job of episode 9 to wrap up as much as it could.
And for J.J. Abrams to tell the story that he wanted to tell, that Rian Johnson really threw off course.
Yeah. And by the way, this is another potential spoiler from episode 8. This movie's 2 years old, and you haven't seen that's on you. But I feel like when they killed Snoke, I feel like J.J. Abrams looked at that when he was given episode 9 to, he's like, oh shit.
What am I supposed to do with a big villain now?
It's like, what do I do now?
That's why, Joe.
Palpatine. But
that's why, and I get that the main defense is that, Palpatine comes back in Legends again with that whole thing. I get that. But in the scheme of this trilogy, it is clear, and I don't care how many times Abrams says it or George Lucas says it, I don't care how many times anyone says it, that the Emperor was planned from episode 7. Bullshit.
Here's the thing. I don't believe that he was planned from episode 7, but when he was in 9, okay, he's in episode 9 now, what are we going to do with him? I thought that how he comes into play with all this, I thought they did very well. I will say that. It's obvious that it was a plan B, but for a plan B, I think it's about as good as it gets. Shifting gears a tiny bit, what'd you think of all the characters in the film? How would you say, and again, without giving away too much, how would you say they handled all the characters in the film?
Many of the characters are handled very poorly.
You think so?
I'll say right now, my favorite character in this movie, as well as the trilogy at large, was Kylo Ren.
Same here.
I appreciate his arc, even though we've seen it before. I appreciate it. Mm-hmm. And I think it was very emotionally engaging.
Yes.
There was a particular scene in the movie that I'll talk about when we get into the spoilers part of the review that was one of the few moments in the film that I really, really emotionally connected with. It was really, really good. And just the way that his arc ended and the way that it progressed throughout the trilogy, I really appreciated it and enjoyed it. I do think he was the best part of the trilogy.
I think so, too.
I'll say
Character-wise.
Kylo Ren definitely the best character in this movie and probably in the trilogy.
I agree.
Rey was all right, I guess.
I think here's the thing with Rey. At least with all the characters, we'll get into her in just a second. But with all the characters, I don't know how much I can say. Like, they were their own people. I don't know how much I can say. It's very weird. Like, yes, I want to know what happened, but and I guess to an extent, I definitely cared. But it's just like I don't know how memorable they are. And again,
Exactly.
I don't know if maybe it's because they are still pretty new. Like, I'm sure there's this subconscious tendency. I'm sure, at least in a lot of people, to compare them from the characters of the original trilogy or even the prequel trilogy. But again, all of those movies have been out for 10 plus years.
Exactly.
I don't think we've had enough time to really decide how much we really like, Finn and Rey and Poe. But, at least with Rey's character, she's got a great internal conflict, I will say that. And that internal conflict is put to great use in this movie, at least in my opinion. But when it comes to just her and her abilities, she's good at everything. She's good at everything. There aren't a lot of weaknesses that she has. What'd you think of what about Finn and Poe? Like, I always liked their bromance a little bit. I always thought that was cool. I guess that's the most I can say about that. What are your thoughts on that?
After episode 7, I couldn't be more disappointed with how they've handled Finn. He was a fine character in episode 7, I guess. He was,
Great internal conflict.
Yeah. And in episode 8, I always had the criticism in the fact that I really thought he should have died at the end. When he was about to sacrifice himself and they were going to blow the door off the tunnel that the Resistance were hiding in. And then Rose ridiculously saves him and has probably the most awkward kiss I've seen in a movie in my entire life. But
I had my first kiss. I got her on the chin. That was less awkward than this kiss.
Exactly. but more or less, I really thought that would have been such an honorable sacrifice and would have just shot Finn into like the stardom of all-time Star Wars characters if that sacrifice would have went through. So, and then in this film, to top it off, they really do nothing with him other than him being the sidekick.
Yeah.
And there's a ridiculous plot thing that they just decided to throw at us in the third film about him.
Yeah.
But honestly, and the one thing I am happy about when it comes to Poe Dameron is that I feel like they finally used him to his potential in this film.
Yeah.
Poe Dameron was a big part of this film.
He was.
And
he does, and he gets... Yeah, he does well in this film. He gets a great role in this film for sure.
And I like Oscar Isaac, so I'm glad he was...
Yeah, he's a solid actor. I like him a lot. I think we should review it. We should give our grade now, before the spoilers, and before we get a little bit more into that. So do you want to go first or you want me to?
So I did rate it from 1 to 10. That's usually what I just do with ratings. I gave this movie a 6. Now...
Higher than I thought you were going to give it, I'm not going to lie.
As I said before, I'm more lenient with this film because of the fact that I feel a lot of its faults were The Last Jedi's fault. So inevitably, I am more lenient with this film. I am. Yeah. To a certain degree, I am.
I'm going to give this an 88. I thought, I liked this so much more than I thought I was going to. And I was pleasantly surprised. So it just goes to show that despite what everyone's saying, you always got to go in and make your own opinion. So, all right. So we're going to start the spoiler section now. Anyone else in the studio, heads up in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You want to start me off?
Yeah, sure. So I'll start. Can I start with the things that I liked? Because I like starting off positive.
Sure.
So as I said, there were things I liked about this movie. First of all, I'll start off with Princess Leia. I really, really admired how well they did with how little they had.
Yep.
When it came to, obviously Carrie Fisher tragically passed away, and she was not alive for any of the filming for this movie.
Rest in peace.
Yes, definitely. They had very little to work with between probably very limited CGI with her and mostly deleted scenes.
Deleted scenes from, I believe, Force Awakens, right? Yep.
Yeah. And somehow, and this is why I have to give them credit, I don't know how they did it. I don't know how J.J. Abrams...
it was very, at least to me, it was very seamless.
It was. There were some times where you could tell from the back there was somebody else standing, like a body double or something, but they incorporated it really well. I was really impressed with that. And I that was my first positive that I wanted to point out, because I really appreciated with how little they had what they were able to do with Leia and just wrap up her arc, So I appreciated that. I also, as far as emotional scenes that I really connected with, and I spoke about this about Kylo Ren earlier, I loved the scene when he saw Han Solo as like a
Yes.
memory again.
Yep.
That was really what gave him that final push because, and it's a reasonable thing to really officially push him back to the light because not only has he been being tempted by the light since the very beginning of The Force Awakens, he goes right up to Darth Vader's helmet constantly and says, "Forgive me, I feel it again, the pull to the light." And he keeps on asking for help. Remind me of the power of the dark side. And after he kills Han Solo, you hear it in Episode 8, Luke tells him, "I'll always be with you just like your father." And in this one, Rey says, "I see right through you. You can't get past what you did to your father." So there was a good build to that.
Yep.
So when he saw his father again and how they sort of mirrored the scene on the bridge from The Force Awakens, except it just has a different result this time. Yeah. Instead of going after his father, takes his lightsaber and throws it over the damn cliff. So I really, it just felt like it was really wrapped up very well. I'm glad Harrison Ford came back for the role.
Yep.
I know he really doesn't want
I didn't see that coming, honestly. I didn't know he was going to be involved in this
exactly.
one.
And again, as I was just about to say, I know how he feels about the Han Solo character at this point and how he just really Harrison Ford just straight up doesn't care about Star Wars. I think
there comes a point where you're just done playing the same role over and over again. And Harrison Ford is such a talented actor; he wants to do other stuff.
Exactly. So I'm really happy. I probably fainted his paycheck for that one scene, but because what they probably had to pay him to come back.
Yeah, just look at what Mark Hamill for just standing there for 5 seconds, $300,000 right there, or something like that.
Except Mark Hamill wanted to do more. Harrison Ford doesn't.
Yeah.
but regardless, I really, really liked that scene. Emotionally connected with it. Another scene that I really emotionally connected with, which it was very brief, but it really hurt me when Chewbacca found out about Leia dying.
Oh, that was tough.
You can't even understand Chewbacca. He doesn't speak English, but just when you can emotionally connect with someone that doesn't even speak English, that shows you how
that's
good.
Powerful.
Exactly. Like he just felt like the pain on his face. He falls to the floor, pushes everyone off him. He's like crying, his head in his hands.
And it didn't feel over dramatic either.
No, there were some emotions in this movie it connected with me. It really did. And finally, amongst the things that I liked, I'll wrap up with this because this was one of my favorite parts of the movie, if not my favorite part, surrounds around this fact. I am so grateful that Luke Skywalker actually acted like Luke Skywalker again. I didn't know who that was on the screen in Episode 8 that Mark Hamill was playing, but it wasn't Luke. In this film, it was. And even Mark Hamill said, that wasn't my Luke Skywalker in Episode 8. The guy who plays him said that. So what does that tell you?
Yeah.
So I really am happy that happened. And my favorite line in the film, I've said, this is my favorite line, Joe. When Rey takes a lightsaber and throws it into the fire with Kylo Ren's ship, he catches it. Yep. And he says, "A Jedi's weapon deserves more respect." You know what that was a dig at, don't you?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
The first time you see Luke in The Last Jedi, chucks the lightsaber over his shoulder. That's J.J. Abrams taking a dig at Ryan,
just
baby.
Like, yeah,
you gotta know it.
It's like a big fat middle finger.
Even me in the middle of the theater, when that happened, I nodded in improvement.
I was kind of confused at that at first. I'm like, wait, what?
I loved it. I love it. And Luke was acting like himself again. Mm-hmm. And I get he was acting like himself The Last Jedi, whatever, but regardless, when it comes to being a hermit Jedi, there are other ways you could go about it. I'm not saying he has to be like Ben Kenobi, but you don't have to have Luke Skywalker walking around talking about how the Jedi need to end either.
Yeah,
because that's just not Luke, in my opinion. And just some of the scenes, like with the milk from the animals and just him acting all weird, I was like, what am I watching? I don't know, just...
It's like National Geographic in space.
I don't know how many of you agree with me on this, but I just really felt that Mark Hamill on screen in The Last Jedi, and he even said this about his own character too, I just felt it wasn't Luke Skywalker. In this, I felt like I was watching Luke Skywalker again, and it warmed my heart, because I love Luke. He's one of my favorite characters. And just how it felt like he was there again, and how he was acting like himself, I loved it. So I'm glad that JJ reeled that back in and gave me Luke Skywalker back for at least one movie in this trilogy that I majorly disliked. So, listen, it's the facts.
Yeah, no, it's just funny how you said it.
But honestly, I'm very grateful for that. But as far as the things I didn't like, there's a big list. I don't know if you want to comment on the things that I said I liked, but...
I mean, going back to what you said about, J.J. Abrams reeling certain things back in, I think certain people have said that J.J. Abrams is just like, a copycat. I don't know if I'd call him a flat out copycat, but I think when it comes to like, a lot of films that he definitely takes inspiration from, I think it's done out of like a genuine respect for them. And like, as I look at this one, and it definitely seems like he tends to harken back to like, the original trilogy, but it never feels, I don't know how much I can say it feels like him copycatting. And I remember the film, Super 8. Did you ever watch that movie? It came out a few years ago?
I haven't.
Okay, so that movie, wonderful movie. That movie came out, I want to say like, 8 years ago, and it was definitely like a harken back to like, the Steven Spielberg films of the 80s, like, it's like E.T. on steroids, if I'm being honest. It's a very, very good movie. Very good movie. So J.J. Abrams seems to have a genuine respect for the filmmakers that came before him. But yeah, no, in terms of what you're saying with Kylo Ren, I really do love what they did with him. I love what they did with him. He's definitely my favorite character in this entire trilogy. Definitely got a bit of a temper, if I'm being honest. But he's deep down, underneath like all that, brainwashing and all that like corruption of his soul. There's a genuinely good person there, and it's interesting like what can happen when you have someone that is a good person at their core, but is basically corrupted and brainwashed into doing terrible things, and it would come out of the people. Like, here's the thing, if you look at Kylo Ren at the end of the movie, you wouldn't, if that's how he was throughout the entire trilogy, you wouldn't expect him to do any things that he actually did. But I think that contrast between like what he has actually done and who he actually is inside, I thought that worked very well. I thought that was very powerful. So Kylo Ren is definitely, I definitely agree with you when you say that he had the best character arc in the entire series. Going back to what we were saying about Rey, I loved the twist that Rey's a Palpatine. I did not see that coming. I thought, and like I said, a lot of this film definitely, like I said, it's damage control from The Last Jedi, and I think they did the damage control very well. And given the circumstances, I thought they cleaned themselves up very, very well, particularly with this. Rey being so good at everything and being so powerful out of nowhere. I don't know if this was the plan. I don't think this part was the plan. But at least in retrospect, it definitely worked, at least in my opinion, very, very well. With Rey being so powerful, being so good at everything, then it makes a lot of... Then her being a Palpatine, it kind of... It validates that a bit more, at least in my opinion. Because obviously, Palpatine's, no slouch himself. Yes, he's a master manipulator, but he's an incredibly powerful guy himself. He has all the Sith in him. And that was another thing I thought was, like, very good that they did in this movie, too. Like, it's not just Palpatine being this, like, outrageously bad, bad and, like, powerful person. He has the energy and power of all the Sith, all the thousands of generations of Sith in him in this film. I felt like, honestly, even though he's kind of coming back to life, however they do that with him, even though he's coming back to life, they still stepped him up a bit. They still upgraded him a bit. And I think her being a Palpatine worked very well because her defeating Palpatine and her being basically the last trained Force-sensitive person, she is basically the embodiment, the personification of balance to the Force. Because think about it. After the Emperor dies, Luke's the last one left. And then, Luke takes in a bunch of Jedi to train, as it was said in The Last Jedi, and the balance of the Force is off put. Then, all those guys are either slaughtered or turned into, stormtroopers. Then it's Kylo Ren and Luke. Luke dies. So then there's just the balance between Kylo and Rey. Rey in the light, Kylo in the dark. But then Kylo comes back to the light. He dies. So then it's just Rey. Rey has the power of Palpatine. And also all the light side of the Force as well. So, in that one scene where Rey accidentally uses the Force lightning, I didn't see that coming out of nowhere. So it basically shows that she is the personification of balance of the Force because she has the abilities of the dark side. But has the balance from the light side because she chooses not to use them for bad. You look at her lightsaber too. Red is obviously bad, blue Blue is obviously good, as well as all the other colors. Yellow is supposedly neutral.
And so is white, too, because Ahsoka Tano in the TV show also has white sabers, and she's neither a Sith and also nor a Jedi, because she's not in the Jedi Order anymore. So she had white sabers as well, so she was seen as neutral, too.
But so it basically goes to show that she has the power of both sides. But she's not technically associated with either side anymore. She is that balance.
Which is the way it should be in the end, because, that... I do understand what you're saying, but when it comes to balance of the Force, the person I look at is Anakin, because that's his prophecy as the Chosen One, is to bring balance to the Force. And that's what I was most worried about with this film, if they were going to undermine his arc. The thing that would have made me just walk out of the theater, honestly, was them saying, if they were to say this, that the prophecy was misread and Rey's the Chosen One. I would have.
That would have been a total cop out.
I would have said that is it for me. I'm checking out. But
her being a Palpatine and her ending off the way to do, because even then, it's not like she plans on training any more Jedi. She buries Luke and Leia's lightsabers.
Well, who knows about who she's going to train now? Because again, going back to Finn and them just throwing something random at us in the final film of this trilogy, he's apparently Force sensitive now. Yeah.
Apparently, because does any of that really matter if the Force sensitive person isn't trained? If the Force sensitive the Force sensitive person isn't actually user or cultivated in any way, he's just
I would think that being a close friend to Rey, that if and when Rey sees that he is Force sensitive, I would think she would train him. Just
you would think, yeah,
just as a friend, but
there's no guarantee that's if they even make more movies.
No, the Skywalker thing is done.
They got to be done.
But as far as Rey being a Palpatine, what you were saying, I was very whatever towards it, and it definitely did understand her overpowered powers, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
But again, that's still not enough for me, because for the little amount of training that she had and the amount of time that she had, as opposed to all the training that someone like Luke Skywalker and Anakin Skywalker, two of the most powerful Force users ever, the training they had to go to get to the skill that they got to. And their powers, in my opinion, especially Anakin was the most powerful Force user in the galaxy, and nobody contended with it at his full potential. And he still had to go through years and years of training to get to his power.
Yep.
So I just that's why I really have a tough time when the film started. And the first scene I was talking about earlier was she's floating in midair with all the rocks floating around, and she's just flipping and everything, and other certain things in the film, pulling a ship back. I was like, where's his power? I know where the power is coming from. It comes from the Palpatine lineage, but how quick did you learn it? Oh my god. I know Leia's instructing you, and Leia learned from Luke, and which they also decided to throw at us in this film, which I'm happy that they did. Better late than never, but
I think, this goes back to the idea when, you don't realize, what potential you have until you're pushed to use it. And there's that scene where she's pulling this shit back, and, Kylo Ren's the one pushing her, and then, that's when she discovers, her real strength, her real power out of nowhere. She's pushed to do so. So I think, at least in that sense, it made sense, at least to me, but I could definitely see, why, someone could feel it kind of just came out of nowhere, didn't it?
Just in the short amount of time that she had training. She trained for 2 minutes with Luke, had no training at Episode 7, and then maybe had about a year with Leia. To have the powers that she had, that's not enough for me. Mm-hmm. It doesn't make enough logical sense. I don't care what her lineage is. Luke and Anakin, two of the most powerful Force users of all time, needed more training than that. That's just how I feel about it.
Yeah.
People can dispute that, but especially with Luke Skywalker partially, but especially with Anakin, you can't argue with that. Anakin needed a decade of training to get as skilled as he did. And he's a Chosen One.
Yeah.
Nobody has the Force capabilities of the Chosen One. So you can't even argue that point. So that's why I just really wish they would have at least had her train a little bit more so you could believe in her powers a little bit more. That's a legitimate issue I had with this film. It's how did she get that powerful in this window of time?
Yeah.
That's all I was left wondering.
That makes sense. That definitely makes sense. There were definitely a couple other, plot holes that they never really, answered. I think the biggest one in the entire series was how did Mace Katana get Luke Skywalker's lightsaber? That's what sets all this off.
Maz Kanata not finding Luke's lightsaber. The answer was a good question for another time.
Yep. And that's
What
it.
other time? We never got the answer. Because guess what, Joe? I said it in episode 7, and I'll say it now. There was never an answer. The damn thing fell down an abyss. How did they find this thing? It's silly. That's the problem with this trilogy. The fact that there was no plan. I said, right when she said that, in the theater of episode 7 in 2015, when she said, a good question for another time, I said, I'll translate that. We have no fucking clue.